Yeah. Mike, are you ready?
Jamaican
All right, we're just missing Sean, who I don't know if he's coming, so if he comes in, he comes in, and Enid's away, so all the members of council are present. I don't know if you want to do a roll call of finance.
Sure. Do it.
Well, tell us who's here.
Everybody's comedian.
Ted Quinlan.
Let's see. Craig's there, Rebecca's there.
Yeah, Rebecca O'Donnell.
Yes. Okay.
Hello.
Okay, so we can start. I guess I'll kick it off, Mike, if you don't mind.
Please. No, please, that's what I was hoping.
So, as we've done for, I think everybody's been involved, maybe except for Rebecca, in the budget process. In the last couple of years, Mike and I have worked together to continue these joint meetings, which I think have really worked well. This meeting, and then a subsequent meeting or more if we thought necessary, but this meeting and then another meeting, which we shouldn't forget, please remind me that, try to come up with a date that works for everybody, at least prospectively, for a meeting on capital, so we can discuss that. It can be during council's review or during finance review. I don't really think it matters, from a timing perspective, because it's not gonna affect the budget per se. But what I want to do in this meeting and what we've done in the past is just have finance discuss with us, kind of at a high level, what their opinion of the budget generally is, from a kind of a macro perspective, with respect to their tolerances, the bonding, the debt service, kind of the more the true financial aspects of the budgeting process that I think in the past, before we did these joint meetings, we had a lot of questions on council, and it was, let me call Mr. Manjos, let me call Mr. Manjos, let me call Mr. Manjos. So I think the last couple of years, we removed that. So with that, unless we have really specific questions about where we're going relative to some of these finance-specific questions, I'd like to reserve everything else for our independent deliberations in council, and then any specific questions we have, which do come up periodically about how is this funded, if assuming that our finance department, Ron and Heidi are always here, they can't answer it, which I've never experienced, and we need some input from finance. We'll get that answer, and at the end, don't forget, typically there are some unresolved issues that council has that we will send in an email or some kind of formal letter over to finance just saying, hey, we looked into this line item or that item, and we really couldn't make a determination. We kind of defer to you, and here's what we were thinking from a council perspective. So that also is an opportunity for finance to look into it. So with that, Mike, I'll just turn it over to you, and if you want to just
Please.
do what we've done in the past.
Yeah, no, again, thanks for setting this up. I mean, we've definitely found that getting these joint meetings, getting everybody in the same room, starts the process much easier. I think this year we're much further along. I give Ken, Ron, and Heidi all the credit in the world because they've really been bringing this thing to a higher level than we've been in the past. So again, I've been brought in as of 2 months ago. They've been running things by us. We've been drilling into some of the bigger items that are always an issue of concern. For those two, obviously healthcare, pensions, debt service, all those things we've really drilled into already to make sure we've got sharp numbers for you guys to look at. I do love the idea of doing the capital meeting again. I think that's one of the most productive things. And honestly, I think everybody's aware of my opinion on this, but I'll just reiterate it for the record is, picking projects is not the role of finance. I truly believe the role of finance is to tell the town what they can afford, and the town should figure it out. My job and our job as finance is to say, hey, this is how we can pay for it, and this is how we can afford to do it, but not to get really deep into the specific picking projects. I find it to be a conflict of interest with finance. So I've tried over the years to stay as much out of that as we can, leave that to the first selectman and town council. That being said, debt service is always a big issue. We've done a real nice job over the last 5 years of bringing it down and making it a much shorter duration. It's been a focus of ours for a long time. So I would like where we're at. And we do have an appetite to take on some debt. That being said, it's because we're paying off debt at a fairly rapid clip. So, keeping a consistent debt level is not a problem. And, Ron has all the mappings done of where our debt's been over the last 10 years, how much rolls off over the next 3 years, and then that factors into our tolerance for debt. So again, we'll give some very specific parameters. Again, it doesn't mean we have to spend it. It's not an obligation. But again, if there are particular projects, and I truly believe in knocking stuff off, because the more we put it off, we always know it costs more later. So I'd rather do some debt work each year than push off for a couple of years. We also have a little different schedule this year since us to push back our referendum date, which will help us get more accurate numbers, specifically where it comes to medical and the state. I'm sure everybody's aware that, budget season, our governor has already started putting proposals out. We try not to react to those terribly, because our experience has proven that what usually comes out of the gate and what gets finished are very different things. So we keep a very close ear. Our first selectman and our representatives have done a great job of staying on top of it for us. So, we get constant updates. But I would try to warn everybody not to overreact to the things that are out there right now, and just kind of, I believe we budgeted stay flat at this point, just till we see where we go. If we listen to the governor, there is a hole, but we don't know if that's going to happen or not. So I'm not ready to make any moves on that, but that's the kind of stuff that I believe we got to leave to finance and figuring out how we're going to fund those things.
Right.
The other thing from a very high level is, I believe everybody's aware that our fund balance is in a very healthy position. There are parameters to the balances on fund balance, and we are pushing against those, if not over those. So there are proposals to use some fund balance, but only because we've been running up at such a high level. And that's been building over the last 5 or 7 years as well. So again, some concerns might come up, or questions might come up of, why are we using fund balance? That's the reason, because we have a written policy in place, and it's available for there to be used. We've budgeted it the last 2 years. We haven't used it yet.
Okay.
And then beyond that, again, I would love to do another joint meeting for capital, and then I would suggest, since we'll probably have about a month or 6, gap between when you guys are done and when we're done, it might make as town council come to one of our sessions near the end, just because things might have changed something. It might be worth having the conversation again. I think it would make everybody more comfortable, and we would love to have the input of, if something changed, post you guys having the budget, we still want to have you guys involved in the process.
Right, I appreciate that. That's worked well in the past too. And along
Exactly.
along that line, I just again, for the people that are new to the process, one of the other things that kind of an informal understanding between finance and council has been, finance has really left to council the position, departmental and town hall position adds or reductions in staff. And has really stayed away from adjustments as far as salary is concerned and or the per diem compensation. So that's kind of another informal agreement that seems worked really well in the past. Of course,
exactly.
subject to adjustment for
rules
times.
is just an understanding, exactly.
Right.
That,
Right.
Again, I really believe, finance's role is easy to get overreaching because you have the checkbook. So it's just, you got to be careful of, not try to go too far. And that's certainly where I want to stay.
So, Mike, with regards to some of the things that we don't look at, one of them is revenue. And there's certain assumptions that are made there, and I know finance is always tied into that. Can you just discuss that, you know, the revenue projections that are being used. Again, setting aside the state and all the other unknowns, mostly the tax collection and, you know, the estimates in that are within an agreed upon tolerance from your perspective?
Yes, I mean, again, the revenue measurements have always been conservative in revenue. You know, we've always used the collection rate, which is fairly conservative. Historically, I think everybody's aware that since I've been on, we've always exceeded our revenue projections because we've been conservative, and we'll continue to do that. We will have a couple of new twists this year. You know, we have some new people who will be involved in the process for the first time. You know, new assessor, we're going to do tax collector. So there'll be a little more probably time spent on that. We've already gotten updated assessments, and you know it's looking positive at this point, which will help us at the mill when we get to that point. But again, just so everybody's aware, we tend to do the revenue and the mill rate as the last possible thing, so we have the most accurate numbers.
Right.
So we'll have a really good trending of this year because we'll be, you know, well through March and have revenue numbers for 9 months of the current year. We'll also have a better projection. We might not have final state numbers, and again, those can always change, but we're going to make conservative assumptions based on that.
Okay.
So right now, I'm comfortable with where they're at. There's nothing in the revenue side that scares me or feels like it's being pushed up to the edge. We might talk about the collection rate, you know, when push comes to shove, because it's always a fun conversation, even though it won't involve Benny this year. But those are the things that we really will address and spend a majority of our time on it. And to your point, again, we've really tried to stay out of the personnel decisions, and to me, that's the job of the, you know, town council and the first selectman.
Okay.
Again, as long as we can afford it, I'm happy to leave it to you guys.
Along those lines, some of the other things that we've discussed kind of in a vacuum on council and joint meetings have helped were the estimates for, you know, an HR, the pension, the insurance. Have you had an opportunity to look at those figures, and what are your opinions of that?
Pension is in a very good place. I can get you guys the updated reports because we did this year. We had the reval. Our pensions are in a very strong position. 2 years ago, we lowered our assumption rates. We looked at doing rates before, but we've been able to have some savings there based on the strength of the pension right now. So the pension has never been in better shape, and we're one of the strongest plans in the state. Certainly on the town side, there are some issues on the police side. We got some estimated numbers, not only for this year, but for the next few years going out that are concerning, to say the least. So we're investigating if there are possible alternatives to that. The medical, I don't know if everybody's aware, but Board of Ed is planning on transitioning off their self-insurance.
Okay.
So that's, again, numbers we've been working on and going forward there. The town side, again, are always a little bit of a guesstimate, but they've certainly been vetted out pretty deeply already.
Okay. Great. Any preliminary questions on any of these subject matters so far? The other thing I kind of want to throw out there, Mike, and you and I always keep an open dialogue when necessary during this time when questions come up. But and I know it's kind of preliminary to throw it out to your body, but you know, if there are any I'd like to hear from any members of finance as to any overarching opinions relative to any of the things that, you know, we've reserved informally for council to look at. So if there's an opinion on finance as to, you know, any of the items that you want council to look at, it'd be helpful to have those opinions in advance so that we can discuss them and not have to do it, or just, you know, have you presume that we've discussed them with those thoughts in mind. So that'd probably be helpful, something we really haven't asked for in the past, but if there's anything that comes up before you get this document from your members of your body, it'd be helpful for us to know about it so we can look into it.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, again, I haven't spent a lot of time diving into the, any of the personnel side or any of that side because, I've been focusing more on the revenue and the financial aspects and the, potential for refinancing and those kind of things.
Yep.
But I'm sure there might be some others on the body who dive into that and that might have questions, so.
Yeah,
Feel
and-
free to speak up. Yeah.
And not necessarily, I mean, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but not now, but we have some time
No,
too
sure.
with the changes, but it seems like we're always peppering you with questions after we're done with the process, and we don't, we don't ask in advance, so I just wanted to give the same courtesy back. I don't know if anybody,
I appreciate that.
any members of finance have anything at this time? I know it's really early in the process. Okay, well, if it comes up, please send it to us so we can drill into that sooner rather than later. Anything else? So I guess the white elephant in the room is gonna be, this, this state issue, which I agree with you 100%. I really don't wanna get into that this evening. But, as the information, becomes, more concrete, say, or, more purposeful from the state, maybe, it may warrant, another joint meeting or some type of gathering so we can understand what the impact may be. And I know you're open to
I think we've
that.
got to keep that option open because, again, barring a major change in the state, then I think we'll be in a decent position to handle, a cut of some sort without getting crazy. But, we've been down this road a couple times in the last 2 or 3 years where there were draconian proposals out there and, teachers' pension being one that keeps coming up every once in a while, and some other things that could have really fundamental, dramatic changes to the town. We would obviously have to have a special meeting if something like that comes up.
Right, okay. Anything else, anybody?
If I could just,
Mr. Colley?
if I could just piggyback off that, because that, obviously is a item of importance. I thank you, Mike, for saying the preliminary comments of we need to watch this, we need to be concerned, but let's not overthink it too much out of the gate because this is going to be a fluid situation with the state. I just wanted to make everyone here aware that I did send a message out to the community, letting everyone know that the governor's proposal, as presented, does impact obviously our budget as we sit here today. Would impact us about $1 million, and for the future fiscal year for 2021, just north of $2.1 million. I can tell you that even today, we received yet another corrected municipal runs of state aid, like we found an error in the formula, here's an updated run. So these things are going to keep coming out. A lot of the details in terms of how these calculations were created, they still do not have. They just did not have actual bill language until this morning on a lot of things. I was very grateful to be in Hartford yesterday and use the opportunity with our state rep to have a conversation with the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee to make some commentary in regards to how this budget would impact our town, specifically my concerns over the equity versus other communities, how we fared versus others, and wanting to make sure that this is something that's considered as well. So that was actually well received. There's been some subsequent conversations about that, and I'm cautiously optimistic that the door is open for further conversations. I attended a meeting at the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities this morning where the governor's chief of staff spoke with a group of my peers about obviously the budget and various impacts on what was happening, and he extended an offer to meet with any of us individually, which I plan on taking him up on. So we will have further conversations, in that regard. So I will be certainly up there advocating for our town and making sure they understand that what these adjustments as they sit here today, what they really mean for our community. Because they're certainly not something that we want to take lightly as they sit today. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kellogg. Anything further? The only thing I want to do before we adjourn, Mike, before you jump off, is just try to discuss a good date for everybody for for that joint capital, or do you want to just do that offline?
Capital.
You want to do that now, or you want to do it
I mean,
offline? It
I'm
doesn't-
happy to do it now, if you guys are happy to do it now,
I mean, I think we can just maybe ballpark a date, and if it works for everybody, and if it changes, it changes, but at least we kind of understand when we can do it. I have our schedule. We have meetings, a few meetings this evening, and then we meet next week. We have two, the week after we have two. So what's everybody thinking about? You want to do that closer to when you get the budget during our time, I think would work. Do sometime in March, I guess? Does that work? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of looking at, I think the budget comes to us, the 15th.
Okay.
So I was thinking maybe the 7th.
The 7th, we actually have a workshop at 6:30, so why don't we just start with the joint?
Yep.
Capital, we'll go through capital, and then afterwards, we'll just reconvene our workshop. I think that works perfect.
Does that work for you guys on the finance side?
March 7th?
You talking March 7th?
Yeah. Is that good for everybody?
6:30,
6:30, 7,
Yeah.
6 is fine, it doesn't matter.
6 o'clock.
Yeah, we can do
workshop
6, we can do 6 o'clock, we'll just have to convene our royal workshop, and we'll post something that's been adjourned, it's not a big deal. I mean, push back a little bit. Does that work? For now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Works for me.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so March 7th, we'll keep that tentatively, and that sounds good. Anything else?
And again, what I would love to do,
Yep, go ahead, sorry.
we'll come in with kind of a quick, here's where our funding's been, this is what's rolling off the next few years, just English that everybody can say, hey, this is kind of the range where we're comfortable with bonding.
Right.
And then, if you guys want to get into specific details, that's fine too.
Yeah.
To have input on it, but again, I still want to leave the majority of it to Ken and you guys.
Okay, fair enough. So, yeah, if we can do that, and if there's no real strong opinions one way or the other, we can probably just, free you guys and run right into the discussion fresh off of the joint discussion as to capital. We'll start our workshop with capital and go through with that, so I think that works well. All right, great. Anything else?
Perfect.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Enjoy your finance meeting.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.